Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. Just in time to kick off National Adult Education and Family Literacy Week, I am here with Sharon Bonney of CoABE, the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. Sharon, thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, Annika. It's such a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, so a lot of people are probably wondering, adult education, what is that? So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your background. You've been at CoABE for over 24 years. It's really been your career. How did you decide to get into this field? What is adult education? And then I'll have a string of questions for you after that.
Great. Well, yes, I'd love to talk about this. So like many people, I sort of fell into adult education, ended up getting my start working at the front desk of an organization that was founded by a Christian missionary. His motto was each one teach one and win one to Christ. And it was very faith-based, and I loved it. It was a wonderful place to work. And through that work was how I came into working with the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, CoABE, and really found my footing there. But it was a great start. I was a tutor back in that day as well, did that as volunteer work. And I'm very passionate about it for a few reasons. My grandmother is a former GED recipient. She got her GED in her 70s and then went on to get her associate's degree. And my own husband is a GED recipient as well and has gone on to do a lot of great and exciting things. So I really feel that, with adult education is so much more than the GED or the high school equivalency, but that is one important component of it, helping people to reach that milestone. And as we know from the research that if you don't have your high school diploma or equivalency, typically you'll not be able to get certain jobs. It really is a barrier to employment. It's a barrier to community college access as well. So that's why I feel really passionate about it. You asked what adult education is. It's, like I said, so much more than just the high school equivalency or the high school diploma. It's helping adults learn to read and write. So helping a lot of immigrants that come to the country to read and speak the language. It's helping those mothers that want to upskill, homemakers who are now wanting to upskill and learn how to use a computer, learn how to work on their resume, that kind of thing. It's also digital literacy and so much more than just working on a computer. It's helping them. We have like the Google Applied Digital Skills where they learn how to set up a Gmail account. They learn how to work in the G Suite, that sort of a thing. We also have the Google Scholarships here at CoABE. We are scholarshiping over 500 adult learners so that they can get jobs that are family sustaining. So when they're done with getting that certificate in this high demand field, they'll make anywhere from $63,000 to $83,000 per year. So you're really helping adults who are typically impoverished and immediate to be able to get a job. So that's one component of it. There's the family literacy component of it, where adults will come in, single moms, single dads, and they need help with their children. And so their children are getting the skills that they need while the adults are getting the skills that they need. So there's that family literacy component as well. And then just in general, the workforce component. So adult education programs are specifically supposed to be helping those adult learners to get jobs or get into community college. And so we have a lot of workforce readiness programs in the more than 2,300 local programs across the country.
That is a wide swath of activities that you have to keep track of and be invested in on a daily basis. And I know my mom came to the United States to go to university, and she ended up being a social worker. And one of the things she did was help immigrant families with some of the basic life skill stuff, not the stuff that you do, right? But just how do you wash your dishes? How do you discipline your children? Like, how do you sign up for programs to learn English as a second language? And I think people forget, number one, that a lot of adults become adults without being literate, without having these skills. And then we have kids, right, or other family members that we want to help, and we don't have the skills to help. And so then it's perpetuating a cycle of leaving more and more people behind and not providing the skills that we need for people to feel confident going into the workforce and getting the kind of jobs that they may have had in other countries. And I know it's not just immigrants. I know that is a large component of it.
You're so right. So there's what's called the National Reporting System, so the NRS. And in the NRS, it tracks those adult learners who come through the Title II funded programs. And more than half of them are immigrants needing to learn how to speak the language. So that's a huge component. We know that immigrants typically are the ones who will then participate in CoABE as an online entrepreneurship institute. And so many of them they want to start businesses. They want to take the skills they've learned in their country and bring it here into the United States. So that's been a really great segue as well, to really help adult learners to get on their feet as well. So we have one of our projects is the ARP Foundation. We're working with them for seniors, help them to be able to start their own businesses. And so we have that in play. And that's specific. Their mission is, for there to be no senior in poverty or a future without seniors in poverty, something like that. And so they're really working at that. And so we're working with them on a pilot project in adult education programs, 10 programs, over $100,000 that we're giving it back to the field through that initiative.
That is so fascinating because we know our demographics are aging, but a lot of people might have to retire from one job, but that doesn't mean they want to sit at home and do nothing. And maybe they want to finally express the American dream, right? The dream that they had of starting their own business. So I think that's really beautiful. And something else that you said, that about 50% are immigrants. And I think about some of my family members who came over long after my mom, who were highly skilled engineers in Thailand, but then came here and couldn't get the same kind of jobs because the credentials didn't follow over, or English was a barrier. And so they ended up working in factories, doing more laborious jobs instead of using what they had been trained for their whole lives and had successful careers in other countries. This is really something that can be a game changer. My question is, I know that you make a big impact and that you've grown the program so much, you and everybody else at CoABE and all of your partners. Why do people still not know about all of these services? And what can we do to get the word out? Because it seems to me with what we also know about the labor force right now, we need people who are skilled. We need people who are highly skilled in certain areas where we see the direction things are going. And there's a lot of skill gaps and a lot of people that shortages, right, in manufacturing and other fields. And so this would be a perfect way to get more people into the right jobs and in jobs that can help provide for their families.
That's right. And you're so correct. There's such a need, and these learners could really fill that need. In fact, at one point, I believe research was done that showed that really that huge gap in the workforce, that actually those 43 million adults without the skills that they need, that they would more than fill that gap, right? So it's definitely an issue, I think, of a few things. One is public awareness, being aware that most of these programs are offered for free. And there's a location near you where you can go and you can get these services online or in person. So CoABE has what's called the Move Ahead with Adult Ed public awareness campaign. It's helped push over 200,000 learners into programs. So what we do is we work with all of our local programs to get on the map. And so they tell us the types of services they provide, where they're located. Then we help through Google Ads to push them into those programs. We work closely with an organization called Full Capacity Marketing. They're fabulous. So they help us with that. And then through this Google Ads grant that we have, we've been able to do that. But that's just one component. I think a lot of times when adult learners go into programs, it's because somebody they know is doing it. Somebody that they trust says, hey, you should come with me. There's these great people here. They'll help you. So there's that component too. Like, how do we get those boots on the ground, those adult learners out there speaking about it? So CoABE is trying to help with that as well. We have our Educate and Elevate National Public Awareness Campaign. And this is where we really try to have adult learners share their success stories with us. And then we push them out through various methods, through social media, through e-blasts, sometimes through paid campaigns as well. But I think there's still that piece where it's like when they're in the laundromat or when they go to work done on their car, they can share. So I think there's that piece of really activating the student membership. One other component I think is really important is these local programs. They are right there serving with the adult learners. And I just want to first give a shout out to those teachers and administrators day in and day out who work their hearts out for the learners. They are those first responders. They are the ones that when someone comes through their doors and typically they're dealing with low self-esteem, they know that they really need a job, they're really in a difficult situation, they're the ones who will work with them and test them and help them to get into the program that they need, because typically these local programs have multiple options for learners when they come in. So I just want to say thank you to all the teachers and administrators who watch this. I just so appreciate you. You're amazing. You're not alone. There's 79,000 plus teachers and administrators in the system, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act system, who are with you and supporting you. And we have a national conference to support your work as well. We have over 3,500 teachers and administrators that join us annually, in person and virtually. So that's an opportunity as well. And CoABE has a lot of the connection opportunities, because we often hear from these teachers and administrators that they feel alone in their work. They feel very siloed. They're out there working and it's like they feel like they're just out there all alone, but they're not. That's what I want to communicate is you are not alone. you also have access to these learners, and you can really encourage them to encourage other learners to come to the program, or you can run little radio ads. Those are also very effective radio ads and very inexpensive. And not only that, CoABE offers other opportunities. So I just want to encourage them to contact us directly, because we also offer a lot of ways to help them market themselves for free, ways that we can help them through grants that we have as well.
Yeah. Well, and for these adult learners, somebody does hear about the program, they come in, they need services, but then they don't have access to reliable internet, or they don't have a laptop, or they might need help with childcare. How does the adult education system provide, or does it provide wraparound services as well to meet them where they're at?
So Annika, you raise a great point, and this is something we have been really laboring at here at CoABE. We know that there's funding through the Digital Equity Act and the BEAD Act funding. And so we here at CoABE have a digital equity campaign that we've launched, and we're working with national partners on this. We also have digital change agents working in states to try to make sure that the funding comes through to those adult ed programs. There are many, many local programs that are able to offer Wi-Fi and devices. So they can give like the little Wi-Fi, what's the word for it? Like the hotspots. They can give those out. They can give out devices. So that's another great reason for adult learners to check out these local programs, because that's also, many of them are offering that. And there should be much more of that available too. So if you go to a local program and it's not available now, they can still probably offer you those in-person services to help you. And when you talk about wraparound services, that's what adult ed programs specialize in. I mean, what they do is it's very student-centered. And so oftentimes they will have services for their children. They will have services for their aunts and uncles. I mean, they find ways to really just wrap around them, help them get TANF relief or food stamps, that kind of thing. So I really want to encourage any adult learner that watches this, that there are so many possibilities to help you. And we look at it as an opportunity to really transform your life. And I want to share one quick success story, because this really touched me and kind of changed how I thought about things. So in 2017, CoABE started having Capitol Hill visits, where we would bring state directors, state association presidents, and students to the Hill to actually talk with legislators. And we've been doing that ever since. I met a wonderful young lady at that point. This is in 2017. She was one of 9 children. She was molested when she was 12. And by the time she was 17, she was on the street and pregnant with her 3rd child. So she was homeless, pregnant with her 3rd child. She found out about an adult ed program. Not only did they help her to get her GED, they provided wraparound services to her children. And she and I became friends on Facebook, and I watched her as it makes me want to cry. She got her first job. She got her first car. She got her first house. Her children are excelling in school. They're all on the honor roll. And I was like, who is watching this kind of success? Like, is there any way we're tracking this? Which is what brought us to do the alumni longitudinal study that CoABE is doing right now, where we are tracking with adult learners who graduated from these programs, whether it's that they've hit what the benchmark was for being able to read and write the language, or whether it's they've gotten their citizenship, whether they've gotten their GED or equivalent, those sorts of things. So benchmarks for success. And we're tracking with them so that we can show that absolutely adult education is that transformative power.
I'm a little teary over here after hearing that story. And I've heard a few stories about success of adult education, but to know that you can impact a life so profoundly, and it's just circumstance, right, that caused this situation to happen in this young woman's life, but it could turn around so quickly. Are you ready to take your brand to new heights? Join the Brand Amplifier for Entrepreneurs program. Learn how to build, elevate, and amplify your brand with a comprehensive 10-module course. Learn more about it and other ways to implement our strategies at fullcapacitymarketing.com. Click on EFCM Learning Hub for more information. Can't wait to help you amplify your brand.
And Annika, there are so many people when we look at our demographic for learners. I just want to share this with you, because you realize who it is that these adult education programs and teachers are trying to help. You've got aged out of foster care, homeless and runaways, ex-offenders, single parents, those that have exhausted TANF. I mean, you're talking about people who it's like a lot of immigrants who it's like when they come to those programs, it is sometimes their second chance or maybe sometimes their last chance. We know that, for example, in prison literacy, the biggest deterrent to recidivism for those ex-offenders to go back into prison is literacy. There's actually a 43% chance that if they get their GED or equivalent, they will not end up back in the prison. And that's from research that shows that. So we know that when we're helping them in this way, we're helping them change their life, and not just their life, their children's lives. Now they're becoming tax-paying citizens. Instead of drawing on the system, it's like they're giving back to the system. They're buying houses. They're contributing. So I couldn't be more passionate about it because I know we are changing lives. They're at the front lines, where the rubber meets the road. This is the way to give back to the economy, but more importantly, to the personal dignity.
Yeah. Well, and that correlates very well with, isn't it, third grade reading levels?
Yeah.
Really show what the future of prison is going to be like. If kids are not literate by third grade, then there is going to be more recidivism. Wow.
Yeah.
It's great to hear that it's never too late for somebody.
Well, it is never too late. I mean, that's the beauty about adult education is it's anytime from 16 years of age on up. There's no cap. There are graduates at 84 years old, but the biggest group that we're serving is 25 to 44. So that's your workforce right there, right? You're working with working age adults. And because it's non-compulsory, these people come in and they want to change their lives. They say, I know if I don't get my high school diploma, I can't even apply for this job that I want. Many of them, there's been huge barriers to employment. But the other thing we often hear is that they want to read to their children or help their children with their homework, because the greatest comparison for a child's reading level is going to be their mother's reading level. So often, like if a mother doesn't go to college, their children won't go to college. If the mother's not big on reading, the children won't be big on reading. And conversely, when the mother puts a real emphasis on academics, the children then academically achieve typically. So I think it's like a 72% correlation from the latest research I've seen. So when we're helping the moms and dads, we're helping the children as well.
Just beautiful and amazing. And I didn't know that statistic. Now I'm going to carry it with me. Question I have is about employers. So for those who are looking for skilled workers, I know people go to Upwork or they look for VAs online, and that doesn't always work out, and it's not always the right fit because your business might need people in person to work in your storefront, or you might need different kinds of skills like we spoke about earlier. Are there programs for employers to also get into the CoABE system and say, hey, we have these job opportunities and we know that your adult learners would be great for our companies?
So there's a few opportunities. I would mention one. CoABE has the Behind Every Employer national campaign. There's over 584 employers that are engaging with these local programs at the local level. We also work with other employers like Amazon and Tyson and IBM Skills Build and organizations like that. But at the local level, one of the things that these employers need to know is that these local programs, it is in their mandate to work with local employers. Because the idea is that when the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, also known as WIOA, was set up, it was very student-centric, which meant we want that adult learner to be able to get a job when they're done or to get into community college. And so these adult ed programs, there's a few things that they're sort of graded on, if you will. First is they have to have had that adult learner in their system for at least 12 hours and then either help them get a job or help them get into community college. Without that, they don't get to count that adult learner. And so they don't get the funding for it. This is a great way to really encourage local programs to work with their local employers and to have those partnerships in place. There's also what's called integrated education training. So many of these local programs have reached out to their local employers and said, what sorts of things could you use? Like if we had an adult learner here that we could work with them to help them get, learn the language or get their high school diploma, and at the same time learn specific words and skills that relate to jobs that you have a need to fill, what would that look like? And so they'll work with the local employer with funding that's provided through WIOA, and they'll be able at the end of the day to have that adult learner immediately get a job working specifically in that company. And last time I checked, there's over 44,000 adult learners who have gone through the IET system in the last year. So that's exciting because that means that those are individuals who now they have a job. Like they went through the system, now they have a job.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, tell us a little bit about, you said that you go to the Hill 1 year. Does that correspond with the Adult Education and Family Literacy Week? Is that separate?
So I love to talk about this because one of the things that CoABE does, besides providing leadership, professional development, and communication for the field, is advocacy. And we really want to help the field to learn how to speak up for themselves and to tell legislators about the value of their services. So oftentimes what used to happen in the past is programs be like, oh, don't cut us, and oh, we'll fly under the radar and not talk about what we're doing. And that was actually kind of a losing proposition, because if the very entity that's funding you, the government, doesn't know what you're doing, then they're probably not going to continue to fund you, or you're going to experience funding cuts. So back in 2016, when we knew a new administration was coming in, CoABE partnered with another organization called the National Association of the State Directors of Adult Education to kick off Educate and Elevate, a national public awareness campaign that has won 6 international Davies Awards. And what this does is it does a number of things. It helps the local programs to be able to go and talk to mayors, governors, and members of Congress about the value of their services. It helps adult learners that they can submit stories, and they can also participate in our student ambassador program. And we have 262 ambassadors that have been trained across the country that can also go in and talk about the value of adult education in their life. But then also, we still organize Advocacy April, as well as during Adult Ed and Family Literacy, where we conduct legislative visits, but our state advocates for adult education fellows also at the state level go in and do that as well. And that has been so successful. It's brought in $143 million at the state level. But then the overarching campaign, Educate and Elevate, has brought in almost $500 million as well, really staved off funding cuts, but then added year over year. So we continue to have those legislative visits in person and virtually. We continue to encourage the field to nominate mayors, governors, and members of Congress who've been friends of adult education for legislative championship awards. So we have that. And then we continue to provide a whole litany of resources, training, professional development for the field as well. So when you talk about Adult Ed and Family Literacy Week, the whole week is full of different opportunities and campaigns.
I have a history of advocacy and volunteerism. So I love the fact that you're not only educating and helping provide tools and resources, but you're also able to speak on the advocacy side. Because I know that there's a fine line between if you have a C3, if you have a C4, if you have a PAC, like different kinds of organizations and what they can do. So the fact that you can be a voice for all of your partners is really fantastic. What I'd love to know is, what is something that you wish everybody knew about adult education?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing I would say is that these adult learners, they come in and they have grit. They come in because it's non-compulsory, and they're doing it because they really want to change their lives. And so I think that's what I would say, because oftentimes when people think about adult learners, maybe they don't have the right concept in mind. Maybe they don't have that right thinking about who these learners are and what they've done to try to change their lives, and why adult education really is that talent pipeline for them to get into jobs and get into community colleges, to help their kids and grandkids with their homework, to give back to the economy. So I think that would probably be the biggest thing. And then the next thing I would say, if I got to say two things, is that the funding, there's such a funding issue for adult education. Enough can't be said about that, because so many other programs are funded and funded really well. And then there's adult education. We're constantly on that shoestring budget, constantly trying to find ways to braid the funding, constantly trying to make sure employers know we're here and that we are that talent pipeline. And because local programs operate out of so many different sources, so libraries, community-based organizations, local education agencies, work-based, so many different places, it makes it harder, because it's not like when you look at a university, say that's a university, right? And because they have so many different names and that sort of thing. So the branding is a real issue, but these local education agencies, these programs are really, they're in it. They're really trying to help the learners. Many times the teachers and administrators take a pay cut to be in our profession. Many times they work multiple part-time jobs to be able to do what they do, but they do it for the love of the adult learner.
I'm just getting chills because some things are striking me right now. I also am a college professor, and the budget that you said of $800 to $1,000 per student, that's a credit hour, or less than 1 credit hour at the university I teach at. I also think about, I was on a back to school Zoom for my daughter who's in public high school, and we had the Education Foundation come on and talk about, while we live in a fairly nice beach community, we still get a lot less money from the government, but a lot of it's made up for by the families that live here. And we're fortunate that they can hire and use resources to hire extra counselors and extra special teachers and all of that stuff. But when I think about the adult learner and all the things that they're having to deal with, and then coming into an ecosystem that has limited dollars to support them, I mean, that truly profound work. Like, that's God's work. There's no other way to say it, because you're doing so much with so little.
Yes. And Annika, I love that point, because not only that's for those that are in the NRS system, there are those that come in and maybe they get 10 hours of service. We don't count them. Maybe they receive months and months of services, but we're not able to track that handoff to an employer. We don't get to count them, but they're still getting services. So that actually the number is so much higher that are receiving services. And then when you actually look at that over the full numbers, it's actually probably a lot less funding per learner.
Yeah. If you could change this landscape for adult education, where do you see it going? Like, what do you wish to see in 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
I would love to see it so integrated into all of the social services that that's one of the first things that they'd be offered. If you are receiving some sort of social services that, hey, you should go check out an adult ed program, they can help you. I think that's one of the biggest components that's missing right now. So I would love to see that. Also, that public awareness, that people see it as a great thing, not as something to be embarrassed of. Like, people shouldn't have to feel embarrassed that they go to adult ed programs to receive, like high school diploma services or to learn how to use a computer, but oftentimes they are embarrassed and they don't tell people, which is what we were talking about earlier with that piece. Like, why aren't there more? There's 43 million adults out there in the U.S. that need services, because oftentimes people are embarrassed to share, oh, I'm getting my GED, or, oh, I'm learning how to use a computer, or that kind of thing. So I would love to find a way to reduce the shame and eliminate that so that people talk freely about it and see it as a good thing. Just like people are usually proud of the fact they're going to university, right? I'd love to see that same sort of mindset.
Beautiful. And the easiest way, because you've talked about a few different campaigns, is the easiest way for people to learn more, is it to go to CoABE.org, CoABE.org, or to the specific campaigns? What's your preference here?
Yes, definitely. They can check it out on CoABE.org, and it will redirect to different campaigns we're involved in. So one that we're involved in right now is the high school equivalency, and it's numbers that count. And so one of the things that we're trying to showcase is that the high school diploma or high school equivalency, it really helps them. It's an impactful diploma. It helps them get jobs to get into community college. But if they could just go to our website, they'd be able to see that. And then also we're on all the social media platforms as well, so they can follow us there.
Fantastic. And Sharon, do you have a favorite quote or mantra or some words that you live by?
Oh, that's a great question. Educate and elevate. That's, I think, what I'm always thinking. I'm thinking if we're educating, we're elevating in all areas of life, right? It doesn't just have to be adult education, but that constant, continuous educating, which then elevates your lifestyle.
Fantastic. You've left some huge food for thought and some things that I'm like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Why aren't we doing that in the U.S.? So I really appreciate you coming on, having this conversation about CoABE, about adult education, about high school equivalency, and hearing that seniors are going back to learn how to be entrepreneurs. I love that too. So if you are listening and you are a small business or entrepreneur, CoABE will have a lot of resources for you, whether it's to employ people in your local community or find out about other resources and just get connected to find out what you can give to some of your employees or how you can incorporate newly skilled workers into your field. So reach out to CoABE.org. Sharon Bonney, thank you so much for having a conversation with us. Again, we're kicking off National Adult Education and Family Literacy Week, and there is more information about ways that you can get involved at CoABE's website as well. So listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of Your Brand Amplified. And I have another fantastic educator who works on the K-12 space coming up in the next episode for your listening pleasure. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.